This week, we saw the NSE shares trending thanks to Jeff Oduor-Otieno, who is the CEO. We also saw something remarkable about global Visa. M-Pesa is undercutting banks in the Forex exchange. That's also something that was trending this week. Also trending this week, we have seen that Kenyans continue to consume high-profile brand companies. For example, they are consuming brands of soap. They are doing Dettol rather than doing Geisha, meaning that in spite of the high cost of living, Kenyans continue to consume high-branded goods, high-costly goods. We have also seen that instead of consuming jembe, they are consuming soko ugali, they are consuming hostess in spite of cost of living. This is not something very unusual, because in Italy we saw that during the global financial crisis, we saw that Italians consume more luxury brands during the global financial crisis than before. We have also seen that during the cold weather, which is winter, people consume more ice cream than consuming more tea and the rest. So this is very usual. Also important this week, we found that MTN Uganda nabs Safaricom's top executives in the name of Sylvia Mulinge as their next CEO, who has not been seeing eye to eye with her boss, Peter Ndegwa, who currently is the CEO of Safaricom. No wonder Kenyans went on Twitter tweeting, "We miss you, Bob." This brings us to a key decision this week on CEO succession planning in Kenya. Since the CEO succession planning also see appointment is a board decision, we have to understand what is important, that what is the board's main decision, what's the board's most important decision. And the book we just launched called Strategic Thinking, 10 Lessons for 1,000 Strategic Plans, highlights the most important decision the CEO makes, boards makes, which is the appointment of a CEO. So the question is, just like Safaricom was battling with the idea of replacing a foreign CEO with a Kenyan CEO. You remember that Michael Joseph was not Kenyan, Bob Collymore was not Kenyan. Actually, they say Michael Joseph was a European, and then Bob Collymore was a white man in a black man's skin. Remember all these sayings, meaning they are looking forward to a black CEO, which means a Kenyan CEO. What I want to say, to understand this question, I have to say that a good student of strategy must be good in history. So let me take you down the memory lane on what has happened in corporate Kenya regarding the hiring of CEO, even while we have replaced foreign CEOs with the Kenyan homegrown CEO. The first company that was on contention was actually KCB. We had Terry Davidson running KCB, and we had Martin Oduor-Otieno taking over from him. That was a fantastic decision, because it proved a point that a Kenyan homegrown CEO could take over a company, run it. Martin Oduor-Otieno left the company to Joshua Igara. He ran it very well, and now it has been taken over by Paul Russell, who is a Kenyan. The success story of KCB continues to be told. Let's now go to another company called Kenya Airways. Kenya Airways, lately, the latest foreign we had was Mokis. Mokis was a foreigner. Mokis has given the company to Alan Kivaluka, and Alan Kivaluka is now running in Kenya Airways. We can still say those are still succession stories that we can actually relate to. But let's talk about the opposite of this. In Uchumi, we found a scenario which is the opposite of where the board needs to make a decision, where the CEO is the one making a decision. So Uchumi appointed Jonathan Siano as the CEO. Jonathan Siano went on to hire his own boards, and remember that the story was disastrous. It was a disaster at Uchumi. So then what do we need to think about after understanding this context? That corporate Kenya need to take the CEO succession strategically. What do I mean by taking it strategically? First and foremost, the board has the responsibility to understand the context of the organization, external context. also understand the internal context of the organization. After understanding the internal context, external context of the organization, the board now needs to appoint a CEO that should be able to take the company to the future. Now, what do I mean by that? Let me give an example. When a company is going through an environment where growth needs to take place, and also the company needs to devise its growth as their strategy, they usually can appoint a marketing CEO who should be able to come with marketing strategies that expand and grow the company. That's what Joshua has done at KCB, because he was given KCB when they had 2 million customers. He left it at 17.3 million customers. Also, the board can understand that the company has been doing very well, but the culture has been an issue. So the board can appoint a CEO who is an HR leaning or HR oriented CEO. For example, at KCB, maybe what needs to be done at KCB is that all the tech has been done, market has been revived, but now KCB needs to do a cultural transformation, and that's why maybe they have appointed Paul Russo, who is a HR leaning CEO, who can be able to get the culture of KCB right to make it go to the next level. Also, you may find that when a company is wants to go through a strategy for strategic innovation, they may appoint a CEO who is very innovative, who may come with new initiatives that may actually be able to help the company. Now, with M-Pesa, Visa or M-Pesa Global undercutting banks in terms of forex exchange, maybe this could be what Safaricom is up to, but the story for another day. So what we are trying to say in short is that we have seen in the past also, when a national bank was going through serious asset issues, non-performing loans, non-performing assets, they appointed Mr. Marambi, the late Mr. Marambi, may God rest his soul in peace, who turned around the bank, sold off non-performing assets, restructured the bank, and the bank came back to profitability. What I'm trying to say is sure that the company, the board needs to think about the context, the outside, the context of the company, externally, internally, appoint a CEO who will align the internal, external with the future aspiration of the company. Anytime you get that right, you are in the right direction as a board to hire the right CEO. But look here, the board that allows them to think more of past records, let's say future past performance of the company, cash flow, balance sheet, P&L. If you spend more time in the past and the present without thinking about the future, you are going to fail. In fact, as a rule of the thumb, I can say that every company, every board needs to think more, spend 80% of the time analyzing the future to see who can be their future leader, than spending 80% of the time discussing about the past and the present and becoming oblivious of the future. Many companies have died because of that. Call it Kodak, call it Nokia, name it. The examples are too many in the world. But for the board to do that, the board needs to do something very strategic. The board that spends 80% of their time or 100% of their time discussing about the past and present, that board can become what's called a compliance board. But in board evolution, we need a board which are strategic, which spends more time on the future, looking at the context, which is the present, trying to make the present with the future, and that determines which kind of CEO they hire. But any board that hires a CEO because of the past and the present may have the right CEO for the past and the present, but will never have a CEO for the future, and that what kills the strategy of an organization and take organization to oblivion. Remember, lesson for this week, board's most important decision is to hire the CEO. The board must be strategic to do that, and then the board must hire a strategic CEO depending on the internal context and the external context of the company. Then the company will thrive. That is the most important lesson for this week.